Our second reading today comes from Luke chapter 24. We have first the resurrection story where nobody has seen Jesus' body quite yet. And now we have Jesus appearing to the two on the road. Throughout Luke's gospel, Jesus many times has taken bread, gave thanks, and broke it. And here in this story, we see that people recognize him in that moment. So hear these words from Luke chapter 24. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were talking with each other about everything that had happened. And as they talked and discussed these things with each other, Jesus came up and walked along with them, but they were kept from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing together as you walk along?" They stood still, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem that does not know the things that have happened there in these days?" "What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people. The chief priests and the rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the third day since this took place. In addition, some of our women amazed us. They went to the tomb early this morning, but didn't find his body. They came and told us that they'd seen a vision of angels who said he was alive." Then some of the companions went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they did not see Jesus. He said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what had been said in all of Scripture concerning him. As they approached the village to which they were going, Jesus continued on as if he were going farther. But they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening. The day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, and broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he disappeared from their sight. They asked each other, "Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened Scripture to us?" They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and those with them assembled together, saying, "It is true, the Lord is risen and has appeared to Simon." Then the two told them what had happened on the way, and how Jesus was recognized by them when he broke the bread. Andrew?
Thank you, Drew. And so that's what we have this morning, 2 resurrection stories. We see the women at the tomb early on, and they believe because they don't see Jesus there. It's the absence that helps them understand. And then the 2 disciples who are on the road walking this long 7-mile journey, they discover Jesus is resurrected not because they went looking for him, but because Jesus appears as a stranger and walks with them and talks with them and then finally eats with them, and they understand. All of us come to our own faith in a variety of ways, and it is not the same for each one of us. Some go looking, some go searching earnestly, and not finding Jesus, some believe and some doubt. Others of us, we go about our daily lives not necessarily looking for God, and yet God might be standing right there with us, and we are shocked when we realize that we were so close to the divine. We all have relationships and people that we talk to in different ways. For most of us, the people we know best, we show a different side than we show to strangers. And often, at least for me, I don't show the best of myself to the people I love the most. I show the best of myself to strangers who don't already know how bad I am, and I want to put a good foot forward. And so with strangers, I'm very polite. And at a meal, I give off an air of religiosity that is probably so pretentious that those of you who know me well would throw up if you had to eat with me, watching me be Pastor Andrew. Because I don't talk to strangers the same way I talk to my kids and my wife and my friends when I have meals with them. Likewise, I don't always have the same type of, presentation with a stranger that I do with people who know me very, very well and have a shared history and can call me out when I'm not quite as honest as I think I am. You see, when we have people over to the house, and as a pastor, we have lots of gatherings at our house, I make sure that we go through and clean everything up. So all of those dirty clothes in the corner that normally just sit there in the living room because we're going to get to it later, they disappear when we have strangers coming over. And I'm always worried one of the children will one day finally say, "Daddy, why do we leave clothes out when Uncle Joe comes, but we don't when church member comes?" Because I don't care what Uncle Joe thinks, because I know that he has worse dirty laundry in his life. Yet these strangers, I want them to see a different side of me. And I think we're a little bit reserved then when it comes to that. I save my most barbed sarcasm and cynicism for people who know me best. And for others, I have, I think, very genuine, heartfelt, honest, slightly vulnerable, not completely, conversations with those people I have not yet known well. And I wonder why. Because if it's supposed to be the people I know best that I share the best of myself with, why am I politer? Why am I more nice? Why am I better with the people who don't know me yet? And more importantly, why am I better to them than I am to others that I've already gotten to know? Because I admit, when it comes to days like today, where we have family and friends all around, I go to those situations with preconceived notions about what's going to happen. I know that Great Aunt Susie is going to bring up politics, and I know what she's going to say about it, and I know how much I'm going to hate it. And so I'm ready to fight her already before she even gets into the room. I know that if we have that one brother-in-law show up at the dinner table again, he's going to say something about something, and I'm going to be ready to fight. And so I go in with clenched fists, already ready to go. And yet, whenever there's the stranger at the table, the new boyfriend or girlfriend, the neighbor down the street who doesn't have family, who's around for Thanksgiving or Christmas, when that person comes into our table, we are all minding our P's and Q's. We don't talk about why we think that's ridiculous that that politician said or did that thing. We don't talk about our faith even the same way. We're gentle. We're nice. It's like we're dating all over again. And in conclusion, honestly, you're all here for the brass anyway, so it's not going to be anything, I'd say. I even find it on Sundays. I speak differently to the congregation than I do when I go out guest preaching in different places or when I speak at a conference. I am a very different person than I am to all of you here. At times, I'm very self-deprecating when I'm in the pulpit, almost to a fault, I think, because I'll talk about all these terrible things because I'm not worried about you guys anymore, and you've already decided who I am and what I'm going to say. I'm going to be too liberal. I'm going to be too conservative. I'm going to be too whatever it is. So we just stop. Now, the disciples who are walking on the road to Emmaus, they knew Jesus. They'd listened to him. They'd seen his miracles. They'd watched his teachings. They'd heard his prophecies. And yet, when he's with them, he is a stranger at this point. And I wonder how the conversation would have gone if they'd realized it was him. Because instead of talking to him and asking the questions that I would ask, like, why did you have to die? Why did you leave us waiting for so long? Why didn't you just destroy the Romans? Why didn't you help us? Why didn't you do what we wanted you to do? Instead, they speak nice. And they go through the scripture and they ask questions, but you can feel it. It's still a bit more gentle. It's not the anxiety that we see later in the chapter with the disciples who are wondering if the women actually saw what they said they didn't see. It's not the same type of anxiety we see with the prophets with those apostles, with the preachers who come later and have such confidence. No, these two are on their best behavior. And so after having this long conversation with a stranger who's actually a friend, they invite him to come to dinner because that's what you're supposed to do. And it's only then when he breaks the bread that they realize who Jesus is, that he's right there in front of them. I love the image of coming to faith as a journey. And for the women earlier that day, their journey was very quick. They get to the tomb and they believe. Yet for these two, they walk all the way with Jesus, who's with them the whole time, and they still don't quite grasp it until the end, and then he's gone. Do we treat our conversations as though we know the outcome before they begin? Because I know I do. I look at people and I prejudge them. I have preconceived notions about what a person is going to say because of what I think they believe, how I think they act, how I think they live. And often I'm surprised when those people that I think I have so well figured out say something so surprising that changes me. And I get mad about that almost because I want to be justified. I want to dislike the people I want to dislike. Those who think differently than me, I want excuses. Instead, I find more often than not the people across the aisle, they too are children of God, believe it or not. And I'm amazed that they have the same questions that I have, that they have the same worries, they have the same loves and the same heartbreaks, that people from all parts of the world still have the same questions and wonderings about God. The people who have been in the church for 50 years seem to have the same doubts and the same faith as the people who are here for the very first time. And I don't treat them all the same. And I'm convinced Jesus Christ is in each of those conversations we have with our neighbors, and yet we don't always see him. Take the time this day, this moment, and this place, and realize that Jesus Christ is in the faces of the people around you. Jesus is in the spirit of the neighbors around you. Jesus is with your enemies and is there while we debate, while we wonder, while we fear, and while we believe.